loud thud is heard as Hank Pym puts his hand through Janet's jaw, all this over being late for a dinner. Hank stops for a moment, apologizing, telling her he's sorry and begging her to see the injury, followed by a retaliating blow from Janet. She grabs a metering device, smashing it across Hank's face, her years of abuse powering her attack. Back at the team dinner, Steve Rogers, Thor, and Tony Stark are talking about their goals in life and who they are and who they want to be, continuing to debate whether or not Thor should join the team, with Thor being against it in every way. But if they ever need him for something serious, he's just a call away. Janet bites down on Hank's arm, breaking the skin, Hank returning with a slap. As he holds her down by her hair, he asks her why she always starts this when she always comes out worse. Just then, she shrinks down and flies away with Hank, telling her it's not fair to use her powers. She flies back at him, shooting energy blasts into his face. Hank falls to the ground, finding a can of bug spray. Janet has experienced this before and knows what's about to happen. She is engulfed in a toxic spray, sending her down to the ground as Hank taunts her, telling her that it must feel like napalm melting her skin. She takes cover under the desk, attempting to catch her breath. Hank looks under the desk like a monster under a bed, telling her she can't hide because he's a smart guy. Suddenly, ants begin to encroach on her position. Her wings are wet. She can't fly. There's no escape. She begs for him to stop, that it was actually her fault, that she should have never started this. But Hank simply asks if anyone else can hear a little voice coming from somewhere. As she screams, he looks down upon her in indifference, saying she shouldn't have made him look small. As the three men go in for a toast to absent friends, Hank simply looks down at the mess that is his destroyed office, wondering what he just did. At Beth Israel Medical Center, Nick Fury, Steve Rogers, and Tony Stark look through the observation window at Janet, who's in anaphylactic shock, covered in enormous ant bites. The nurse tells them that if she hadn't found the strength to return to her full size, she would have been eaten alive. She tells Fury that a neighbor heard the domestic battle and that the lady across the street saw Pym leaving with a baseball cap and a duffel bag. Betty Ross sits at the Empire Diner with Tony and Steve, remarking that Hank was the same back in college, that he would be flowers and love letters, and some days Janet would come to school with chunks of hair missing, that in college he would get drunk and put her head through the bathroom door. She even heard that once Janet danced with a student at a Christmas party, and Hank punched her so hard the roof of her mouth split in two. Betty had hoped things had gotten better, but it appears to have not been the case. Later that night, Steve Rogers enters the security room, asking the computer to find Hank, zooming in on his location, closer and closer, calling transport for a helicopter. Steve arrives at the location, where Hank is drowning his sorrows with a full glass. The bartender asks if Hank wants the same again, to which Hank responds, asking, "What's the worst that could happen?" A door swings open, and Captain Rogers is standing behind Hank with his hand on the doctor's shoulders, calmly asking to speak with him for a moment. He leans over Pym's shoulder, asking if he's watching anything interesting. Just then, the news report speaks on Janet's recovery, that S.H.I.E.L.D. still won't confirm or deny Pym's involvement, but that the writing seems to be on the wall. A history of violent relationships and an addiction to painkillers. Doesn't take a genius to figure out what happened. Steve looks to Hank and remarks that he believes that the expression for that is a cosmic coincidence. Now, step outside. Hank begins pleading to the captain to sit down, have a drink, and let him explain. But he said, outside. He begins swinging into Hank, telling him that if he likes slapping people around, he should try him. Steve lays a gut punch into Pym, with the doctor taking a moment to plead that he's on antidepressants through the wind being knocked out of him. But Steve doesn't care, telling him to change, grow bigger, give him something that he can hit. Pym yells back that he's a lunatic and he'll get them both arrested. Steve once again yells at Hank to change before he does any more damage, so Hank obliges. Giant Man, now living up to his name, reaches through the building toward Steve, with the captain, seemingly, retreating upstairs, Hank mockingly asking if Rogers changed his mind. Just then, Steve bursts through the upstairs window towards the behemoth's face, telling him he has to be kidding, pulling Hank's face down to the earth and into a construction site. The enormous man lands with a loud crash and a pained scream. Hank gets up, accusing Steve of coming on to Janet, saying he'll smash his face in. The captain runs to a support beam, flipping over backwards and avoiding a light pole swung by Hank. Pym continues flailing at Rogers, to which Steve swings from Hank's hand, delivering a devastating kick to the huge man's face. Hank lands face first into the gravel, with Steve telling him that he's going to spend the next 3 weeks in solitary as he throws a vehicle rim into the fixture, holding a set of massive beams suspended in the air. Hank looks to the sky as if in slow motion. The beams begin to fall towards him, one by one crashing upon him. Just then, S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives, commanding that under the orders of Fury not to lay a finger on Pym, only to realize that in mere minutes, the fight was already over. Steve ignores their order, turning around and walking away, asking Hank how big he feels now. If you want more stories in motion comic form, be sure to subscribe, like, and click the bell to know when I upload next. I also appreciate story suggestions down below in the comments. Thank you, as always, for watching.